Now, the central bankers, they are definitely showing how scared they are of the blockchain technology. Now, normally central bankers wouldn't mention anything about anything else that's going on around the world that doesn't affect their business. I mean, they're afraid of gold and silver, so they mention that it's a barbarous relic. You don't need to own it. It's not a store of wealth. People don't use it as money and all things like that. Everyone looks towards cash, their fiat currency. Well, they're doing the same thing with cryptocurrency as they did with gold and silver. They're out there and they're continually talking about cryptocurrencies. San Francisco Fed President John Williams laid out a case for why cryptocurrencies will never replace paper money. Now, let's think about this for a second. They're out there telling everyone that the blockchain technology that is growing today by leaps and bounds, more and more coins are coming out. They are saying that that is never going to replace their system. This is how afraid they are, because you wouldn't have to say that unless you're nervous and afraid. Now, they went on to say that, first of all, it's volatile, so it's going to be very difficult to hold because one day it's going to be up, the next day it's going to be down, and it's so volatile that you never know where it's going to be. Not like the fiat currency that they can control, where you always know how much it's worth, except it has lost about, 97% of its value since inception. Of course, they do it behind the scenes stealthily, so you don't know what's going on. You don't realize that it's losing wealth. They tell you, no, it's inflation. Inflation is good. Don't worry about that. You're just going to pay a lot more for that. And what that really means is the value of those dollars continually decline. That's why you need a lot more of them to pay for the same exact thing. Think about it. You go out and you purchase an automobile. Everyone thinks, well, the automobile went up in price. No, the value of that currency continually drops. And that's why you're paying more. But they're trying to make the case of why you shouldn't be looking at cryptocurrencies and why it will never replace it. Now, they also went on to say that the cryptocurrency doesn't pass the basic test of what a currency should be. Now, of course, this is the central bank currency test where you can print as much as you want and there's no limits whatsoever. Remember, gold, you only have a certain amount of gold. You hold that and then you create the currency to basically match the amount of gold that you have. This way there's checks and balances. Cryptocurrencies, there's a finite amount that you can create, so there's always checks and balances. Plus, there's a ledger system which shows every single transaction, not like the fiat system where the cash can be used for nefarious means. So basically, they're saying it doesn't fit into their model because as a central banker, what you want is you want to be able to print as much as you possibly can and have these funds diverted to other areas, place sanctions on others, and control countries. So they're very, very nervous about cryptocurrency. That's why they continually come out and tell you about it. Now, what we're seeing is that the next generation, the millennials, they are doing absolutely horrible in this economy. Now, a new report was released by the Young Invincibles, and the financial health of young America is declining. The report includes a cross-generational study of the financial well-being of millennials today versus baby boomers when they were in their adolescence. For the first time, young adults aged 25 to 34 with college degrees and student loans have a median net wealth of negative $1,900. The report states that this lost generation had a positive net wealth of $9,000 in 2013, but since the accumulation of debt has turned America's future leaders into the walking dead. The report update shows new disturbing trends for millennials, including, for the first time, they have a negative net worth. Home ownership among young people continue to trend downward. And once again, they're not making enough money to purchase these houses. Remember, they have a lot of student loans. They can't find high-paying jobs. And right now, everything is a lot worse than it was when we first came on the fiat system. Now, this is what it looks like when we're at the end stages of a central banking system. It starts out great. Then you get into that middle road where credit, is out there and it's plentiful. Everyone can get credit, put your people into more and more debt, because remember, the central banking system is based on debt. And as people pile up debt, as the world piles up debt, the system just breaks down. And they know this. This is why they're always prepared and ready to basically restart the entire system. Now, we do have proof that the younger generation, they're not going out purchasing homes. This is why when you hear on the corporate media and the Fed and the government numbers saying that everyone's purchasing a home, that's ridiculous. Because think about this. U.S. banks, they are racing to launch websites and mobile apps to make getting a mortgage faster and easier. The problem is right now, refinancing volumes, they have plunged as interest rates have risen. Lenders right now are having a very difficult time pushing mortgages because the people, one, they don't have the money. When the interest rates rise, it pushes a lot of these individuals out of the market, and they're getting very worried. And this is why they're pushing these new technologies to try to bring in more people, but it's not going to work, because what happens is, as more and more people find part-time jobs and they're not making the same amount of income they were in the past, and as people have a lot of student loans and a lot of debt and a lot of credit card debt, guess what? They're not going to go out and purchase a house. And as the price of homes continually rises because they're pumping this up with bubbles, guess what? They can't purchase any of this stuff. So no matter what the banks do, home lending is slowing right now. It's declining. And there's nothing they can do about it. If you look at Wells Fargo, it has been trending downward since the financial crisis. We had a little pop-up when they pumped everything up, but everything is moving down. This is what the report is showing about the millennials. Home ownership is at its lowest rate. Home ownership is at its, what is it? We're all the way back to 1972 when the system first came online, the new fiat petrodollar system came online. So we can see right now, all of this is completely falling apart. And it's accelerating right now. The economy is being ripped apart right now, and there's nothing the central bankers can do. The only thing they can do is push us into a recession/collapse scenario to restart the system. That's all they have left. Pensions right now, and we've talked about this before, they're approaching the apocalypse levels. Earlier this week, teachers who are part of the Colorado public pension system staged a walkout protest over proposed changes to the plan, including raising the percentage contribution to the fund by current payees and raising the retirement age. Again, because they can't pay out, they don't have enough money, they're underfunded, and if the stock market declines more than 10%, guess what? It would collapse the pension systems, because they're basing everything off of a stock market return, because originally they based it off a 7 to 8% return, but the interest rates have been so low, they're looking at the stock market, and if this declines, it's going to be all wiped out. It's going to be a complete and utter disaster. So the Federal Reserve right now, the central banking system, the only place they can go is not more stimulus, but a crash of the system, because they will need to crash it to blame it on someone else. Remember, their system only lasts for a certain period of time. Now, when this system crashes and when the whole thing starts to fall apart, depending on who has the narrative, someone's going to be responsible for the debt. Now, if the central bankers, if they are able to keep the narrative of the story and they can create the story of why the global system has collapsed, and they can blame it on Trump or war or whatever they're going to do, they want everyone to know and realize that the debt that is out there, they just don't get rid of it. They're going to tell the people that they are responsible. And we see Angela Merkel and Macron, they were meeting, and Merkel came out with this warning to German savers by telling them they will end up footing the bill if the Eurozone fails. They said there's a huge number of bad loans, especially in Italy, and the banks, they're insolvent, and they know if the EU goes down, guess what? Who is going to be responsible for all this debt? And the establishment is telling the people, you are responsible for all of this. And it just isn't to Europe. It's to the United States. You're going to hear the establishment say the people are responsible for this debt because the central bankers, they're letting you know you are responsible for all of this. Now, again, this is the central bank debt. Now, if we can show that they created this debt through other means, which means we need to audit the central banks, which means the governments around the world would need to basically pass laws to say we need to look into the central banking system, we need to look into the Eurozone system, we need to look into all of this. That is the only way, most likely, we can get out of debt, unless we just go around and arrest all the bankers and put them in jail and say, yeah, we're not doing this at all. But again, we're going to have to show, and through a legal process, of why they need to be in jail, what they've done. And I think that time is approaching. Now, the IMF, they are very nervous about what China and the United States are doing. They're saying, listen, China and the U.S., they need to resolve their looming trade disputes. They need to come together, work something out, because if they don't, this is going to be a complete and utter disaster around the world. The global economic system will crash if we have a trade war. I believe that China and the U.S., they're doing this on purpose. They're working together to shut down the central banking system. This is the main goal. And if we go back to Q's post, and if we go all the way back to post 138, Q said the Fed and the IRS, fact, U.S. Federal Reserve is a privately owned company sitting on its very own patch of land immune to the U.S. laws, which means that we need to go after that. Now, Q had a question and answer session with Anons, and somebody asked the question, Federal Reserve ending? And Q answered, structure. Now, what is the meaning of structure? The arrangement of and relations between the parts or elements of something complex. So what I believe Q is saying is, yes, this is a huge structure, and these elements are intertwined into a very complex system, which again goes with the deep state, then goes with the IMF, with the biz, with everything else, and it's a huge complex system that has to be taken down. And it can't just be one nation. It has to be many nations pulled together to take everything down at the same exact time. And I think this is why Trump, again, has Andrew Jackson hanging on the wall in the White House, working with Putin, working with China, pushing the central bank system to the very edge. Now, while all this is happening right now, we see Russia, again, they don't have any bullion in the U.S. vaults. They're saying that no one can lay their hands on our gold. Same thing with China. They pretty much have all their gold. And we see Turkey and other countries are asking for their gold back because they realize what is about to happen here. And that about to happen thing is the entire system is going to be coming down, and everyone wants to make sure that they have their gold, because those countries that have the gold, they will be able to weather the storm. Now, Venezuela, on the other hand, their gold reserves are dropping very, very quickly. They are in a huge amount of trouble. We know that the United States, and I should say the deep state, is putting a lot of pressure on Venezuela. Again, this is one of the countries they wanted to get into to basically get a hold of their oil reserves, sell their oils using the dollar to try to keep the petrodollar system up and running. And we see right now that Venezuela is doing everything they possibly can to bypass the dollar and get around all the sanctions, just like every other country. And pretty soon these sanctions are going to be a thing of the past, because once the U.S. is no longer the reserve currency, the deep state, the central bankers, they will lose control. Now, because of what is happening around the world with Russia, with the UK pointing the fingers at Russia, with the US, the deep state, pushing war in Syria, North Korea not so much anymore, a lot of global investors, they are looking at the yuan as the safe haven to invest in, which is very interesting because a lot of global investors now are moving towards China. China basically has been staying very neutral in pretty much everything, and this is done on purpose. So this way people see the yuan as a safe haven, a place to go to invest in, because they want everyone out of the dollars moving over to the yuan. And I believe that Xi Jinping and Trump, they're going to be working to move away from the central banking establishment, even though the central bankers have a different plan. So we can see that both sides are fighting for the narrative to take control, and what everyone needs to do is be prepared for any of these type of situations. Now, according to Q, it seems like the Patriots, they're in the lead. Hopefully it stays that way, because it looks like they're moving against the central bank, moving against the deep state, moving against these individuals. But no matter what happens, we are going to go through a transition. The U.S. will no longer be the reserve currency. We're going to be moving into a different type of currency. You're going to have to basically safeguard your wealth. As you can see, other countries are doing this with gold and silver. You should also do it with cryptocurrency, because as the central bankers continually say that cryptocurrency can never replace fiat, you know that cryptocurrency is going to replace fiat because they keep saying it. And whatever they say, it's always the opposite. Just like they said Bitcoin and the crypto market, the blockchain market, it was all done for. It was in a bubble, it crashed. But then we come to find out, well, there were certain entities that were dumping a huge amount of Bitcoin to bring it all down. And after tax day, we can see that Bitcoin is moving up once again. The other cryptocurrencies are moving up again. And believe me, this system is not done for as of yet. Just like with the internet, when we're coming off the internet 1.0 and a lot of companies failed, we had the dot-com bubble. Everyone said the internet was completely done. Was it? No, it wasn't. So no matter what happens, you need to guard your wealth with gold and silver. You also need cryptocurrencies. You also need food, water supplies, because we're going to see inflation. We're going to see credit freeze up. We're going to see the shelves go bare for a little while. Remember, we're at the end stages of a system, and we are moving very, very quickly here. And you can see the central bankers, as they keep coming out with their warnings about regulation on cryptocurrency. They keep talking about trade wars, how it's going to damage the global economy. You can tell once they start making these type of announcements and they keep repeating themselves over and over and over, we're getting closer and closer to that time. So get prepared. We are headed to a major transition.